I guess Al's not getting on. You almost met him.
Yeah, yeah, I saw him for a second. He seems cool. Maybe he'll come
Yeah,
next time.
he's a very intellectual type of guy. He's working on I think comparative religion and different things. Okay, we're going to start out with text 16. I'll do the Sanskrit and synonyms and the translation, and then we'll take turns reading the purport paragraphs. Okay. Dvavimau prosho loke ksharas chaksharevacha shara sarvani bhutani kutasto ksharak uchite. Synonyms: Dvo, two; emo, these; purusho, living entities; loke, in the world; kshara, fallible; cha, and; akshara, infallible; eva, certainly; cha, and; kshara, fallible; sarvani, all; bhutani, living entities; kutasta, in oneness; akshara, infallible; uchite is said. Translation: there are two classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every living entity is fallible, and in the spiritual world, every living entity is called infallible. Go ahead.
As already explained, the Lord in his incarnation as Vyasadeva compiled the Vedanta Sutra. Here the Lord is giving, in summary, the contents of the Vedanta Sutra. He says that the living entities, who are innumerable, can be divided into two classes, the fallible and infallible. The living entities are eternally separated parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When they are in contact with the material world, they are Jivabhuta, and the Sanskrit words given here, Sara, Sarvani, Bhutani, mean that they are fallible. Those who are in oneness with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, are called infallible. Oneness does not mean that they have no individuality, but that there is no disunity. They are all agreeable to the purpose of the creation. Of course, in the spiritual world, there is no such thing as creation, but since the Supreme Personality of Godhead is, as stated in the Vedanta Sutra, is the source of all emanations, that conception is explained. According to the statement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, there are two classes of living entities. The Vedas give evidence of this, so there is no doubt about it. The living entities who are struggling in this world with body changes due to contact with matter. Matter is changing, so the living entity appears to be changing. But in the spiritual world, the body is not made of matter. Therefore, there is no change.
Melissa, hold on a second. There's somebody coming in.
Hello? I don't know if you guys...
Zorana, yeah. How do you pronounce your name?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I made it somehow. I just kept persisting with this thing, and then it let me in. Oh, technology. Love it.
Yeah. Well, to err is human, but it takes a computer to really screw things up.
Yeah. I don't know how I got in.
This is Zeevee?
Yes, Zoe, yeah.
Oh, okay. Zoe, you have so many different names.
Yeah, well, Zoe is my birth name, but I picked Zoe as my nickname when I was a kid. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I like Zoe. Did you ever read that book, Franny and Zoe?
J.D. Salinger, yep.
Yep. Love that book. J.D. Salinger was one of my favorite authors before I started reading Bhagavad-gītā. Okay, well, we're right in the middle. We just read half of one thing because we're trying to get things going here. But she's going to finish reading this purport, and then I'm going to read the next Sanskrit and translation and synonyms, and then you can read the next paragraph of the purport for the next verse, okay?
Okay, this is chapter 15 in the...
15, yeah. Can you see the screen there?
I can, yeah.
All right, cool. Are you on your computer or on your cell phone?
Actually, on my phone. I don't know how I got it. Like I said, I don't know how I got it to work. I just was refusing to take no for an answer, so...
Yeah. Well, keep on trying. Sometimes you just gotta,
Who knows? I don't know what I did.
Really. Yeah, well, somehow or other you're on. That's all that matters. Okay, so keep going, Melissa.
In the material world, the living entity undergoes 6 changes: birth, growth, duration, reproduction, then dwindling and vanishing. These are the changes of the material body. But in the spiritual world, the body does not change. There is no old age, there is no birth, there is no death. There all exists in oneness. Ksara Sarvani Bhutani, any living entity who has come in contact with matter, beginning from the first created being, Brahma, down to a small ant, is changing its body. Therefore, they are all fallible. In the spiritual world, however, they are always liberated in oneness.
Text 17. Uttama Purashastvanya Paramatmeti Udarita. Yoloko Tranyam Avisya Vibharti Avyaya Ishvara. Synonyms: Uttama, the best; Purusha, personality; 2, but; Anya, another; Paramatma, the supreme self; Iti, thus; Udadrita, is said; who; Loka, of the universe; Trayam, the 3 divisions; Avishya, entering; Vibharti, is maintaining; Avyaya, inexhaustible; Ishvara, the Lord. Translation: Besides these 2, there is the greatest living personality, the supreme person, or supreme soul, the imperishable Lord himself, who has entered the 3 worlds and is maintaining them. Go ahead, read the purport, Zoe.
The idea of this verse is very nicely expressed in the Katha Upanishad 2.213 and the how do you say that?
Svetasvatara Upanishad.
Svetasvatara Upanishad. It is clearly stated that above the innumerable living entities, some of whom are conditioned and some of whom are liberated, there is the supreme personality who is Paramata. The Upanishadic verse runs as follows: Nityo Nityanam Satananam. The purport is that amongst all the living entities, both conditioned and liberated, there is one supreme living personality, the supreme personality of Godhead, who maintains them and gives them all the facility of enjoyment according to different work. That supreme personality of Godhead is situated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. A wise man who can understand him is eligible to attain perfect peace, no others.
Yeah, that's good. You do pretty good in Sanskrit. Just for future reference, C in the beginning of Chaitananam is pronounced CH.
Chaitanam.
Chaitanas, Nityo Nityanam, Chaitanas, Chaitananam. Come on, I know the rest of it too. Okay, so that's the one supreme eternal among all other eternal living entities. Krishna is the supreme eternal. Text 18. Yasmat ksharam atitoham aksharada pichotama atosmi loke videcha pratita purushottama. Translation: Yasmat, because; ksharam, to the fallible; atita, the transcendental; aham, I am; aksharat, beyond the infallible; api, also; cha, and; uttama, the best; ata, therefore; asmi, I am; loke, in the world; veda, in the Vedic literature; cha, and; pratita, celebrated; purushottama, as the supreme personality. Translation: Because I am transcendental, both beyond both the fallible and the infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that supreme person. He's not bragging, by the way. He is the greatest, so he's just stating a fact. Okay, go ahead, Melissa. Do the first paragraph, and then we'll take turns.
No one can surpass the supreme personality of Godhead, Krishna, neither the conditioned soul nor the liberated soul. He is therefore the greatest of personalities. Now it is clear here that the living entities and the supreme personality of Godhead are individuals. The difference is that the living entities, either in the conditioned state or in the liberated state, cannot surpass in quantity the inconceivable. potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is incorrect to think of the Supreme Lord and the living entities as being on the same level or equal in all respects. There is always the question of superiority and inferiority between their personalities. The word Uttama is very significant. No one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word Toke signifies in the Purusha Agama, the Smriti scriptures, as confirmed in the Nirukti dictionary, Lakyate Vedartho Nena. The purpose of the Vedas is explained by the Smriti scriptures.
Let Zoe read the last paragraph. If you have problems with the Sanskrit, I can read it if you want.
Yes, okay, that's a lot there. The Supreme Lord in his localized aspect of Paramatma is also described in the Vedas themselves. The following verse appears in the Vedas. Chandogya Upanishad, Tavad Esa Samprasado, Shmak Chariat, I'm not sure. Samutaya Param Yoti Rupan Sampadya Svena Rupan, I can't get, wow, this one's long. Rupan Abinis Padayate Sa Utama Purusa.
That's pretty good.
Oh, that's a long word. The super soul coming out of the body enters the impersonal Brahma Jyotir. Then in his form, he remains in his spiritual identity. That supreme is called the Supreme Personality. This means that the Supreme Personality is exhibiting and diffusing his spiritual effulgence, which is the ultimate illumination. That Supreme Personality also has a vocalized aspect as Paramatma by incarcerating himself as the son of Satyavati and Parashara. He explains the Vedic knowledge as Vyasadeva.
By incarnating himself, not incarcerating himself. He did incarcerate himself when he was in the prison of Kamsa.
Oh my gosh!
But Satyavati and Parashara they're the father and mother of Vyasadeva, who wrote all the Vedas. He's the literary incarnation of the Supreme Personality. Okay, text 19. Yo mam evam asamudo gnati purushottamam sa sarvabid bhajanti mam sarvabhavena bharata. Synonyms. Yeah, anyone who, mom, me, evam, thus, asamuda, without a doubt, janati, knows, purushottama, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sa, he, sarvavit, the knower of everything, bhajati, renders devotional service, mam, unto me, sarvabhut bhavena, in all respects, Bharata, O son of Bharat. Translation: whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is a knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharat. I kind of realized that early in my devotional career. You know, when Prabhupada would speak or when I'd read Prabhupada's books, you can know everything about the world, you know, like what's going on the other side of the planet. When he would talk about like things going on in different countries and stuff, you can actually visualize it because Krishna knows about everything. He knows about what's going on everywhere at all times. You know, so when you know Krishna, you know everything. That's what it says in another place in the Bhagavad-gītā. It says you will know everything nominal and numinous and phenomenal. You know, nominous, you know, phenomenal and numinous, whatever numinous means. I guess that's both. You know, the subtle knowledge and the gross knowledge. So, Melissa, you want to read the first paragraph? We'll take turns reading paragraphs.
I actually need to come back.
Oh, okay. I'm hoping we'll get done with this verse, with this chapter. There's only one more verse after this one. I think we can do it. How is your foot?
It's broken. I won't
It's
be able
broken.
to walk on it for about 8 to 12 more weeks. I can't put any pressure on it. So eight
Oh,
to
man.
12 more weeks. So
So
4 months.
you're going around on crutches, or you're in a wheelchair?
Well, I have crutches. They're hard to walk, and someone lent me a knee scooter from my house, so I can at least do some stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's hard.
Yeah. Get one of those rascals.
Hard to do anything on one foot. Those are expensive. I don't think I could afford that.
Yeah, unless you have insurance.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right, you're reading the first paragraph, Melissa, and we're going to take turns reading each paragraph.
Okay. There are many philosophical speculations about the constitutional position of the living entities and the supreme absolute truth. Now in this universe, the Supreme Personality of Godhead clearly explains that anyone who knows Lord Krishna to be the Supreme Personality is actually the knower of everything. The imperfect knower goes on simply speculating about the absolute truth. But the perfect knower, without wasting his valuable time, engages directly in Krishna consciousness, the devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Throughout the whole of the Bhagavad-gītā, the fact is being stressed at every step. And still there are so many stubborn commentators on Bhagavad-gītā who consider the Supreme Absolute Truth and the living entities to be one and the same.
Okay, go ahead and read, Zoe.
Okay. Vedic knowledge is called Sruti, learning by oral reception. One should actually receive the Vedic message from authorities like Krishna and his representatives. Here, Krishna distinguishes everything very nicely, and one should hear from this source. Simply to hear, like the hogs, is not sufficient. One must be able to understand from the authorities. It is not that one should simply speculate academically. One should submissively hear from Bhagavad-gītā that these living entities are always subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who is able to understand this, according to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, knows the purpose of the Vedas. No one else knows the purpose of the Vedas.
See, the thing is, Prabhupada's using a strong language. I think he's actually, in one sense, calling the academic people hogs, because they have no submission. They have no submissive attitude towards the authorities of Krishna consciousness or the scripture. They just speculate. Oh, the living entities are just like the Supreme, and we're all the same, and it doesn't matter what path you take, it all leads to the same result. It's not true. Unless you understand how it's coming from the spiritual master down from disciplic succession from Krishna himself, there is no way you can understand it. It doesn't matter how much you read. It doesn't matter how much penance and austerity and charity and all these different things. You will not understand Krishna unless he reveals himself to you. That's the only way it happens. And Krishna can only be known by bhakti, by loving service and surrender. When he's pleased with us, he reveals himself. Otherwise, he has like a curtain of Maya that's that prevents intruders to come in. It's like a pretty cool club. Clubs, they have this velvet rope. I always use this analogy because there's a bouncer at the door, and he doesn't let just anybody in. You got to be in with the in crowd. So he'll only let certain people in, and he's got a curtain of Maya. You can't even understand what's going on in the spiritual world unless he lifts that curtain of Maya. So it's kind of neat to be in a club like that because hardly anybody's in it. You feel kind of exclusive, but we don't want to feel proud at the same time. We want to be, we're so fortunate to become in contact with the spiritual master and Krishna. The spiritual master introduces us to Krishna, and then Krishna reveals himself by the mercy of the spiritual master. And it's just so fortunate that we're able to do that. We want to Just keep on in that relationship. Let me just read this last paragraph here. The word bhajati is very significant. In many places, the word bhajati is expressed in relationship with the service of the Supreme Lord. If a person is engaged in full Krishna consciousness and devotional service of the Lord, it is to be understood that he's understood all the Vedic knowledge. In the Vaishnava Parampara, it is said that if one is engaged in the devotional service of Krishna, then there is no need for any other spiritual process for understanding the Supreme Absolute Truth. He's already come to the point because he's engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. He has ended all preliminary processes of understanding. But if anyone, after speculating for hundreds and thousands of lives, does not come to the point that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and that one has to surrender there, all his speculation for so many years and lives is a useless waste of time. It's like shucking or trying to thresh grains of wheat from the wheat that's already been separated from the chaff. It's useless. It's a waste of time. You can't understand God by speculation. It's a descending process, not an ascending process. You can't understand Krishna by your empiric philosophy or your experiment or anything like that. It's a descending process that comes through the mercy of Krishna and Guru and these books, Guru, Krishna, and the Shastra, and the holy name. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one gets Krishna. Without the mercy of the spiritual master, no one can make any advancement. I guess I'll just read this is the last verse, Melissa. Do you believe that? Yeah,
no.
We've been on this chapter for quite some time because we've been I've always had to go to the airport several times, but we can just discuss this chapter at the end, and we'll just end on this verse here. Text 20. Iti guya tamam shastram idam yukta mayanaga etad budva buddhiman syat krita krityas chaparata. Synonyms. Iti, thus, guya tamam, the most confidential, shastram, revealed scripture, idam, this, uptam, disclosed, maya, by me, anaga, O sinless one, etat, this, budva, understanding, buddhiman, intelligent, syat, one becomes, krita, kritya, the most perfect in his endeavors, sha, and, Bharat, O son of Bharat. Translation. This is the most confidential part of Vedic scriptures, O sinless one, and is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection. Go ahead, Melissa. We got about 4 more paragraphs to go here, so we'll take turns reading paragraphs.
The Lord clearly explains here that this is the substance of all revealed scriptures, and one should understand this as it is given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, one will become intelligent and perfect in transcendental knowledge. In other words, by understanding this philosophy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engaging in his transcendental service, everyone can become freed from all contaminations of the modes of material nature. Devotional service is a process of spiritual understanding. Wherever devotional service exists, the material contamination cannot exist. Devotional service to the Lord and the Lord himself are one and the same because they are spiritual. Devotional service takes place within the internal energy of the Supreme Lord. The Lord is said to be the sun, and ignorance called darkness. Where the sun is present, there is no question of darkness. Therefore, wherever devotional service is present under the proper guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, there is no question of ignorance.
Okay, go ahead, Zoe.
Everyone must take to this consciousness of Krishna and engage in devotional service to become intelligent and purified. Unless one comes to this position of understanding Krishna and engages in devotional service, however intelligent he may be in the estimation of some common man, he is not perfectly intelligent.
The word anaga, by which Arjuna is addressed, is significant. Anaga, O sinless one, means that unless one is free from all sinful reactions, it is very difficult to understand Krishna. One has to become free from all contamination, all sinful activities, then he can understand. But devotional service is so pure and potent that once one is engaged in devotional service, he automatically comes to the stage of sinlessness. Okay, read the last paragraph, Melissa, and then we're done.
While one is performing devotional service in the association of pure devotees in Krishna consciousness, there are certain things which require to be vanquished altogether. The most important thing one has to surmount is weakness of the heart. The first downfall is caused by the desire to lord it over material nature. Thus, one gives up the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The second weakness of the heart is that one increases the propensity to lord it over material nature. He becomes attached to the matter and the possession of the matter. The problems of material existence are due to these weaknesses of the heart. In this chapter, the first 5 verses describe the process of freeing oneself from the weaknesses of the heart, and the rest of the chapter, from the 6th verse through the end, discusses Purusomatama yoga.
Okay. I'm going to put it on. I'm going to go over those first verses again, because it's important to get rid of these attachments. You know, the propensity to lord it over the material world, that is the cause of all conflict. Prabhupada, when he was in 1966, he wrote a verse from Bhagavad-gītā 5:29 that talked about the peace formula. And he passed it out in front of the United Nations building during the Vietnam War. And he said, the whole mistake of modern civilization is that we have this false sense of proprietorship. We are not the proprietors. Krishna is the proprietor. We are just we are allowed to use the Father's property in as much as we need, but we're not allowed to take any more than we need. There's a verse in the Upanishad that, you know, you have a right to do what is necessary for it, you know, to take the natural resources, but you can't lord it over or take more than you need. And you can't take anybody else's. Everything belongs to Krishna, and we can use it in his service, but if we use it for our own sense gratification, then we become attached to it. And then from that desire to lord it over the material nature comes attachment, and then we get angry, and then we fight over other people trying to also lord it over, and then you have Russia and Ukraine, and everything's a mess. So that's the peace formula. If everybody understood that, number one, Krishna is the proprietor of all planets and demigods. We don't own anything except even in our own bodies, you know. One time, my spiritual master, Kirtananda, he asked Prabhupada, you know, right when he was a new devotee in 1966, he said, Prabhupada, should I give up everything? And Prabhupada just laughed at him. He said, what do you have to give up? You don't have anything to give up. Our bodies are not even ours. Our bodies belong to Krishna, and they're to be used in his service. So also, the second point is, we're not the proprietor. Krishna's the proprietor. Krishna's the enjoyer. We're not the enjoyer. You know, the only reason we want to lord it over material nature is so that we can enjoy the different natural resources, or, you know, whatever this material world has for us. And we're put here so we can, like, try to enjoy, you know, have our own little mini kingdom where we can try to enjoy. But it's like a school of hard knocks. When we try to enjoy for ourselves instead of using it for Krishna's service, and we want to be God instead of Krishna, then we get, like, kicked in the head repeatedly. And you know, it's a learning process that, you know, when we try to enjoy, then we have to suffer. It's part of the duality of the material world. So when we try to own something and try to enjoy it, then we just get further and further entangled in the attachment and the anger and the conflict of this material world. But if we knew that Krishna was the proprietor and he's the supreme enjoyer, and the third part of the peace formula is he's the supreme, he is the best friend of every living entity. Now, we can be friends of only a certain limited number of people. I mean, how many people do we know? You know, we got our family members, we got our friends, our extended family, but we don't know that many people. You know, my wife and I were kind of like orphans because our families have pretty much divorced us. Since her mother died, we don't really even talk to her sister anymore. And my family, they all hate me. So, because they're atheists, and we don't talk. So, the thing is, we can't be the friend of everybody, even our own family members. So we have to understand that Krishna is the best friend. He's in everyone's heart, and he can be the best friend of every living entity. If we cooperate with him, then automatically everybody in the whole world is pleased with us because we're watering the root. Krishna is the friend of all living entity. When we cooperate with him, all living entities are pleased with us. That's what happens naturally. Let me see, what do they say about, okay. Yeah, he's talking about the banyan tree that's a strongly rooted tree. One thing is that you don't have to actually cut down this tree. Once you surrender to Krishna, all the contamination of the material nature falls away. It's like lotus leaves. And, it says you have to understand, nobody can understand where the tree begins, where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut it down, and with the weapon of detachment. When you're not attached to our own agenda, then we can see things in proper perspective and actually understand how to free ourselves from these attachments and the propensity for lording it over the material world. And does anybody have any questions? We got like 2 minutes left about how
not really, like, I'm just curious, like, I know that sometimes when you do the verses in Sanskrit, there's like the way that you chant them. Like, is that somewhere where you can hear how they're like spoken in Sanskrit or chanted?
Yeah, there's actually there are actually Sanskrit pronunciation guides in every book. At the end of I think at the end of the Gita, there's a Sanskrit pronunciation. Also in every translation, synonyms, Devanagari. Anyway, I'm not sure where to find it in this page, but if you look up Sanskrit pronunciation guide, you will find the different Sanskrit reading hacks.
Yeah.
Like C is pronounced CH. The S, when there's a dot under the S or there's a slash over the S, it's pronounced SH.
Yeah. Like Krishna. Yeah.
Krishna. When it's dot under the S, it's Krishna. And this verse, this Shakam branches, S with the slash over it is Shakam. And Uvacha, this one here, when you got the line over the A, that's Ah. There are different things like that, and like Gyani, Gnani, Gyan, which means knowledge. It's actually spelled JN, but it's pronounced with a G. Gyani. There's different things like that, but you can look up a Sanskrit pronunciation guide.